Well, I think there's confident leader and then there's like self-confidence. There's a little difference, right? Where some people want to be perceived as confident leader and it's not as authentic and aligned and it feels like work, right? Where you're like, oh, this is just like, am I doing it right? Am I not doing it right? And then you question things, you question your decisions, what people are going to think. And then there's the self-confidence that says, either way, I'll be okay.
Have you ever felt held back by self-doubt, whether it's speaking up in a meeting or connecting with others or simply just believing in your own worth? Well, you're not alone. Welcome to the Crazy Confidence Coach podcast. I'm Heather Edwards, Master Certified Life Coach, and my goal is to empower you to step into your most authentic, confident self. Here, you're going to discover practical strategies and powerful insights to help you improve your communication, deepen those relationships, and elevate your self-esteem. And each week, I'm going to guide you through some actionable tips and mindset shifts that are specifically designed to help you break free from fear, show up boldly in every area of your life, and build crazy confidence. Are you ready to stop hiding in the shadows, playing small, and avoiding the spotlight? Grab your favorite pen and a notebook, and let's get to it. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I am bringing in a guest who is a colleague of mine who I've become friends with because we've done so much together. And through our conversations, we have talked about communication and confidence so much. She is an executive and leadership coach, life coach. With her focus and my focus, we have the best conversations and have seen some consistencies. And I think it's very valuable, whether you're a leader or not. We all have leadership roles in our life to some degree. And I think the conversation will be valuable for all of you. In my past, I've had the title of an HR director. I've worked with a lot of the C-suite. And one thing that I know for sure, and Stacy agrees, but we'll let her speak to this in a second, is that every leader has confidence challenges. We are going to speak to that today. But before we get into all of that, I want to formally introduce Stacy Bahnsen. And she is, like I said, executive and leadership life coach. And I'm going to give her a moment to talk a little bit about herself, why she got into coaching, why it is a passion of hers, and even why she wanted to come on today.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be here. I love your podcast and you, of course. So yeah, let's just get started. I think, the reason I kind of got into coaching, I think is what you had mentioned. So I'll start there. And it's a very quick little story, but it was weird. Like for 5 years, I had been, studying and watching someone who was a life coach, and I listened to every podcast and I was like hanging on every word. And it's just really what I wanted to do my whole life when I grow up. Right. And I had worked as an operations director at Neiman Marcus at the time for like 8 years. And it was just after COVID. My dad had passed away, and I was sitting in my living room one night, and I was burnt out, totally drained and exhausted from work, thinking like every school would open, I would fill out all the information, and then I would hover over the button and I wouldn't hit it because I'm like, oh, it's so expensive. It's $25,000. I can't do this. How am I going to pay for it? I was so nervous because I didn't know what was going to happen next. And I would fill out all this information, hover over this button and not push it. Something came over me. I don't know what it was. I was sitting in my living room one night after work, nowhere to go, nothing to do. And I just looked around and I thought, is this as good as it's going to get? Like, is this all there is for me after I filled out this form and everything? And like, what does my life look like if I do this? I was like, oh gosh. And then I started to talk myself out of it. And something came over. I was like, what does my life look like if I don't do this? And that's the first time I asked myself that question. I looked around. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't not do it. And I hit the button. And then all of a sudden, for the first time in years, I felt elated. I was so excited. I'm like, oh, I'm doing it. I'm going to be a life coach. I'm so excited. And then after 1 minute, I became petrified again.
Had the exact same thing happen to mymyself.
Yeah.
You click that button, you pay that big amount of money, and
there's no going back. So I would never go back, obviously. But the one thing I'm always thinking is just hit the button, right? Just hit the button, just do it, because you'll never know if you don't. And I thought it's worse not knowing than it is knowing and trying it. Absolutely. And regardless of the outcome. So
love it. I love it. And I think so many of the listeners that are out there can relate. There's something that you want to do. It's super scary. For both of us, we made decisions that were not only financially a big decision, but completely changed our lives. Stacy made the jump just before I did, but we both quit very lucrative jobs that had great titles, had, I guess, great importance in the world or what the world would tell you. I don't really subscribe to that anymore. But I would say that it is scary. And if you're out there and you're listening and you have something in your mind that you want to try and you're scared of it, obviously there's some prep that can go into preparing for making big decisions in your life, but doing it rather than not doing it is always better because you don't ever have to wonder what if. So I love it. I love it. Well, today we are talking about the characteristics of a confident leader. And we've both been in positions where we've been the leader. We've been in positions where we've coached people, and we've been in positions to, coach managers or even people who are just employees who are reporting to management. Every single one of those positions needs to be a leader of some sort. So with what you do, Stacy, what do you kind of define what a confident leader means to you?
Well, I think there's confident leader and then there's like self-confidence. There's a little difference, right? Where some people want to be perceived as confident leader and it's not as authentic and aligned and it feels like work, right? Where you're like, oh, this is just like, am I doing it right? Am I not doing it right? And then you question things, you question your decisions, what people are going to think. And then there's the self-confidence that says, either way, I'll be okay. Either way, I feel confident that I'm very clear as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm nervous or I have fear, but I'm just going to be courageous anyway and do it. And knowing that you can always redecide your decision. And then I just think having this a presence, when you see somebody and you can just like, wow, you can tell they just feel real good. Right.
Yeah.
And how do you get that? I want that.
Yes.
I want to have that thing she has, right?
Yes.
And really it just comes from inside. It just comes from like this knowing that says, I'm fine either way. And you don't need somebody to condone your existence or approve of you. Because you're just like, it's fine. It's okay. Right. I'm okay.
Yeah. And I think that, I love that you said, I want that, because if we could bottle that and give that out to people, that would be fantastic. But the great news is I do believe you and I both got into coaching because we believe you can harness more of that. If you are a person who's sitting on the bench, who's questioning yourself, who doesn't feel confident, who doesn't have that, you can gain more of that through coaching, through your own actions by taking intentional action to get there. So let's just jump into your 5 characteristics of what you think a confident leader looks like. You mentioned that person walking in the room, and I want that confidence. The one thing I want to touch on briefly, which we might also touch on when we go back into the other parts, is even that person walking in the room who looks confident, who is beautiful, put together, all the things. My belief is, and I want to know if you believe this too, I think I know the answer, but don't you believe that person is also still struggling to some degree, or at least questions themselves in some way?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's a misnomer that those people they've got it all together. And I wanted to just clarify that because, the joke, I want that. Well, you can have that. It's just about managing yourself around it. Let's talk about number 1. What is the number 1 thing that you think someone who is striving to be a better leader or even a better person in general, like what do you believe creates a more confident leader?
I think the number 1 thing that I find in 90% of my clients is not trusting yourself. You know what you want to do, because a lot of times, like, I just don't know. I'm not sure what I should do. I'm like, what if you did know what you should do? What would you do? Just take a guess. And then all of a sudden the guess is safe, right? So they take a guess and all of a sudden they spew out all the things. I was like, wait, see, you do know what to do. What made you not feel comfortable doing it? And it's always fear is behind that, right? So it's not ever the first thing. It's usually the thing that's behind it. And it's fear. It's fear of being judged. It's fear of the outcome or being wrong or, making a poor decision when you realize you can always redecide again and you're not locked into anything. So I think it's just, if you just trust yourself and trust what you know to be true and be authentic, it can't be wrong.
Yes, I love that. So I want to go back to something because I think it's something I'm familiar with. I think it's something that some of the audience might be familiarized with, but are familiar with. You have mentioned redecide a couple of times, and I don't think everybody understands what redecide means and how that plays a part in becoming a better leader and being more confident. Can you just touch on that just a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, somebody said this once. It's like a rocket fails its way to the moon like 1,000 times. It has a goal. It's going to go to the moon. Right. And it's like throughout its process of going to said moon, it shifts and turns and alters its angle and process, et cetera. So you can have this amazing idea and you're never going to know the exact outcome until you actually get there. Like you're not going to know how to do it until you do it and arrive. And so a lot of times like, okay, here's my hypothesis is I want to get from point A to Z. These are the steps that I know should work to get there. And we're going to decide, and this is what we're going to do. And then you get to step, halfway through, you're like, wait, this isn't really working. No problem, right? The way we thought it would work, it turned out it didn't. Okay. But that's okay because we can redecide throughout this process and yet still make it to the same goal in the end. So we think that we're locked in on one decision, but you're not. You're locked in on deciding on this is what we're going to do, but the how we're going to get there, people get so hung up because they don't know how to get there. Of course you don't. You haven't gotten there yet.
That's the part that prevents them from getting started, right? In my teachings about dirt, the doubts, insecurities, resistance, and triggers. And that part of it will keep you from ever moving forward so that you have the opportunity to redecide. The one other key thing that I'd like to add to that conversation is decisions that are made swiftly get to the end result quicker, even if they're the wrong decision initially. Because you gain information by those failed decisions. For those people who are visual, I want to paint a different visual. You were talking about the rocket. When you're driving somewhere at nighttime, you put your headlights on. You only see 15, 20 feet in front of you, right? Even without GPS, if you don't move forward, you don't get there. You have to just move forward to see more of where you're going. And I think it falls in line with this idea of deciding and redeciding. So I love that concept. So let's move on to the next one. What would be another characteristic that you would see that leaders need to really hold on to be confident?
Yeah, I actually have another visual. It's funny because I have a friend that's a car person, right? And when we were talking, we just kind of came up with this. It's like you're not frustrated because you can't decide. You're frustrated because you're sitting on a Ferrari engine and you're driving it like it's a rental Prius. And we're like, just turn the ignition. It's okay. Pick a lane, stay in the lane and accelerate. That's all you have to do, right? Yeah. And like, ooh, a rental Prius. Not that there's anything wrong with a Prius, but it's not a Ferrari. I don't have either. Anyway, that was the visual I had too.
I love it.
Funny. But another characteristic I would say just would be, I think just courage and to be seen, right? So courage to be seen, meaning a lot of times we wait for somebody else to say it's okay to do this or to agree with us or make us feel more comfortable about what we want to do, when that just might not happen when you're in a leadership position, especially in the higher up leadership positions. You have a lot, the decisions have a lot more detriment. Like if it goes wrong, it's going to be really wrong because this is a big decision. So a lot of times it's very hard when you don't have people to bounce things around off of, like, oh, should I or shouldn't I? And that's when it goes back to the trust. You just have to trust yourself that I'm going to do this. This is going to be my decision and I'm going to be very courageous about it. And it doesn't mean you're fearless. You're always going to have a little bit, or maybe not always, but you're always going to have a little bit of fear and nervousness, right? About things that are different or new or might not be received very well. But it's the courage is just do it anyway. And I always think like, it feels really, really unnerving and it feels really bad and like scary to have to do something that you don't know how to do, but it feels worse, or it feels actually the same, very scary and nerve-wracking to sit and just not do it.
Absolutely.
So, that's kind of a crappy feeling and it feels crappy either way. So you might as well feel that way and do it and then at least move forward than just sit there and feel it and then have regret because you didn't do something. So I think courage is the second thing that I would say is most important.
I love it. Courage is so, so important in life in general, right? Just with your marriage or with your children or just in life as well. So I think it's important to really explore that. But I do want to go back to, you talked about as people move up, like when they hit the C-suite, it's a really lonely place. And that is something I think a lot of people fail to talk about. I remember being in a director level position and realizing I had nobody in my periphery where I worked that I could share my challenges, because it that you're sharing information that might be important to your company or where you're at. And I felt very lonely there. But one thing that I would like to tell people who are struggling with that, maybe you're in a new management position and you've surpassed some people that you used to work with and be peers with, or maybe you have recently become a CEO, CFO, or something like that. One thing I would really encourage you to do is find support for you. And I know, Stacy, that you're in the same vein with this. Like, coaching is really important. And I'm not just saying that to sell someone into coaching. I'm saying that because it's important for you to be clear about your goals, your decision making, feeling good about what you're doing, and having someone just to talk through the simple things that are going on. Now, it doesn't have to be hiring a coach. It could be a friend. It could be finding a group or someone with other people, that are in the similar role that you're in, something like that. I just wanted to add that because when you were talking about, it getting lonely, that is such a key point, that sometimes you become lonely really quick and it's not something you're prepared for. You strive when you get into a job or you're doing something and you want to be a good leader. So you're a great leader. And then all of a sudden you get the promotion and you're like, wait, nobody told me it's going to be lonely and it's going to be scary and it's going to be all the things. And you're introduced to a whole nother level of being you. So, or it's just a new company, and that's the same thing there. So
anytime you take on it, even if you take on just a different position or role, it's still new. And people think, oh, it's, she's done this before. No, it's still new to me right now. And I think the word isolation came to mind when you were saying lonely too, because people are like, oh, it's lonely at the top. No, it really is. It's very isolating to not be able to expose certain things about yourself because they might be used against you. It's always, sometimes we're not indecisive. We're just overloaded and overwhelmed. And yet, like you said, too, it doesn't have to be coaching. It could just be a peer group of other HR managers or other directors or CEOs or something that says, oh my gosh, yes, we struggle with this too. Not to commiserate. That's not positive, obviously, but to just hear, like, I'm not the only one. And sometimes it's nice to hear that.
And just bouncing ideas off. I think there's so much value, and that's something that you and I have done pretty well together because we've kind of grown up in this coaching world together, and we're able to kind of say, hey, bounce ideas off of each other, because it's new to both of us, even though we're both leaders and we've both been in positions that are higher level positions. It's important to have somebody to bounce ideas off of.
It is.
Are you ready to move on to number 3?
I am ready.
Yay. Let's talk about the third.
I think just my personal opinion, what I've seen with people is where they would struggle. And this, honestly, this is in leadership, but this isn't just at a job, because leadership doesn't come with a title. It doesn't come with a promotion. And even if it does have a title, it's just a title that somebody gave you. It's not a title that has to define you, right? And I think that's so important, because one sidebar note too, is that when I did stop, working at Neiman Marcus, operations, et cetera, I had a lot of people around me all day, like 100 people all day, a huge building, 200,000 square feet. All of a sudden I was by myself and I was like, wait, hold up. This is just not very comfortable at all. I was like, IT, is there an IT department around? There wasn't, nowhere. It was horrible. The thing is like what the title that they gave me came with so much. It literally defined me, because when I didn't have it, all of a sudden I was lost without it. I'm like, wait, who am I? If I'm not a title and I'm not that person at that job, what do I tell people I do? And it was just very eye-opening until you shed every single layer of who you used to be, who people think you are, who you think you are, to then be left with just yourself and say, okay, this is authentic. And this
so good. So good.
It was so painful, like, to not have that identity. So whatever identity people are giving you, you don't have to own it. That's one thing I do want to get across, is that you don't have to own that identity. Like, you're a parent, you are a wife, you are a teacher, you're a CEO, you're whatever, you're a human and you're a person. And
you're a daughter, all the things.
Right. And you don't have to be excellent at all of those things or perfect at any of them. at all. But people think, oh, I have this title, I have to be a great mom. You are a great mom just because you are.
Right. Yeah.
There's no scale to measure that level of greatness. But so that's one thing I think is just so important. But I'd say the next thing would probably be curiosity over being certain about something. And a lot of times we continue to just look for evidence to make us feel more comfortable about what we're going to do. And like, well, and then we kind of hold ourselves back by we'll find evidence also that we shouldn't do something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think just saying curious over being certain about something is important. And then the next one I think is just consistency with boundaries, of course, meaning people watch you more than they listen to you. And it's not just in your actions. It's also just repeating the same message over and over, whether it be a mantra of some sort or your company's, overall goal. You have to just keep repeating the same message, send the same message, and your entire team has to adopt that same message too, because you can't have confusion when the CEO, the HR manager, and the ops manager all are repeating the same overall overarching message that they want the teams to understand and have and feel like this is who we are. This is our culture. To then have, 5 managers not on board and sending a different message. Creating a culture is like turning a slow moving ship. It's like, it is. You don't have, it is exactly. If you don't have everyone on board, it's the Titanic.
It is really. And it's funny because I kind of want to skip back to what you talked about the curiosity, because one of the most valuable tools I think any manager can have is curiosity. Because if you can be curious about something rather than judging it, shaming it, blaming it, whatever, going in, especially from an aspect of trying to understand something or trying to gain a greater appreciation for anything that's happening in your team, within your management, your core managers, with people in the field, whatever it is. And I'll throw in there with your husband, with your wife, your kids, whatever, all of it. If you will ask questions out of the genuine place of curiosity, you will, you're going to gain a better, deeper connection with that person, and you're going to learn something. I think sometimes we assume that the reason some behavior is happening or why people aren't on board and ready for the Titanic to turn is for XYZ, when in reality, there's something completely else going on, and you never can find that out if you're doing it by force or just telling them to just do it. It's super important to step back, get curious, tell me what I'm missing. What is there something that you're seeing that I'm not seeing? That is such a powerful question from the standpoint of especially the C-suite down to their managers or even a husband and wife team, whatever it is. If you can just say, is there something that I'm not seeing that you're seeing? You break down walls, you open up the conversation, which is just going to give you more knowledge. And so I wanted to go back to that because I think it's such a valuable tool. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the whole curiosity over certainty, because if you're certain, then there is no flexibility, right? If you're certain, you're just there, you're done. If you're curious, you're open to what else could be, what other opportunity is here. Does that make sense? Like it's
so good. Yeah.
A good thing to do.
Yes. And there's that, because that just doesn't create this line in the sand. And I think so many people enter a conversation knowing for sure what the problem is and having the solution already planned in advance without actually listening. And sometimes people think they listen when they're truly just waiting their turn to talk.
Yes.
And someone's saying something and you already know what you want to say before that. So I challenge people to, every time you go into a conversation, you have to come out with 2 things that you didn't know before about the person, the situation, or something else. Because if you do, you have to listen. And you should want to listen, really. It's hard because, we think we're right, and we probably are in our own mind. But I'm going to tell you, when I worked at Neiman Marcus, I would have one situation that happened. I would have 2 people, 2 completely different people that were involved in said argument, for instance, right? And they both tell me the exact same story, but each one has a completely different perspective or belief about the situation and why it happened. And if you just listen to them, my boss at the time would just believe the first thing she heard. I'm like, no, hold on. We have another person. We want to hear what they have to say too. And it's really valid. And I can see, yes, what this person did was wrong, but the reason behind it makes complete and total sense when you put it all together as one complete package. And also too, just out of respect, people want to be heard. You just listen to people and you'll learn a lot about yourself and them too. And that sounds cliche, but you will, because a lot of times we do think that we know the answer. And then when they start talking, we listen, we're like, oh my gosh, I was so wrong about them.
Yeah. So I want to repeat that for our listeners because it could be easy to get lost in that conversation, that you tell people to start with, and I'm going to let you say it, asking, tell me what are the two things that you want them to do when they're in a conversation?
They have to lead the conversation and they have to have learned two things about either the person or the situation or the circumstance that they didn't know before they started the conversation.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Because that is such a great setup for your brain to go, okay, brain, slow down. Your job is to find two new things or two new whatever. And the other thing that I think it sets you up for is being what? Kind of curious, which is my whole thing in life is like, if we just are more curious, and I always say Curious George didn't really talk. He was always, looking into more things, right? But it's like no stone unturned, and be really there and listen in. And I want to say my brain goes to, wouldn't that be a great goal for a networking meeting? Or like when you go meet somebody in a meeting, or if you're traveling to go for work, you know how that is. You gotta go to some event for work and you're like, what am I doing here?
I don't know
Half
what
the
to talk
time
about.
you don't want to be there. But if you use that tool that you just gave, it gives you something to do, and it will truly give you some outcomes that will be beneficial to you and to the participants that are with you, or the participants. That's so cliche and like whatever, but the humans that are in front of you. So
right. Yeah. It's the people. And even if you have to go to a work event with your husband, or like if I go to events with my boyfriend, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to say to some of these people because I really don't have a lot in common. It's just asking the questions like, okay. And I actually had to teach somebody who's like, I don't know what to say to anyone. I get so nervous in social situations. I'm like, you have three options. You could ask, how do you know so-and-so, like the host of the party? Where? So where are you from? Did you, take you long to get here? And then I think the other one was why. As they're answering the questions, you can just ask them why. Oh, that's awesome. Why do you think that? Or why would they have done that? Oh my gosh, that's so great. It's just a way to like ask. If you start with either one of those three options, it's really easy then to just listen to someone's answer and then just keep going. Oh my gosh, I love that. When did you from their answer? And then you just keep asking questions. So it is, I think staying curious is so important because it gains clarity. And clarity is the number one thing. It's like clarity over confidence. Clarity about your situation gives you courage. Curiosity helps to create more clarity about something, and you feel more confident to do it.
Absolutely.
It's just, I think clarity at first I was like, that just seems like a buzzword or something to me.
Right.
But it's like, am I clear? And I was like, I need more clarity. I just am so confused right now.
Yeah.
Hold on. I need more clarity. I don't understand. I'm overwhelmed.
And sometimes I think when we say clarity in a leadership situation, sometimes it's you being clear about the message. One thing with HR, unfortunately, which I know you had this too, doing what you did, oftentimes you're sitting down with someone who's done something that they shouldn't have done, or dealing with something that's a little emotionally charged, right? So one thing that I would always do is get really clear about what the goal of the conversation was before I would go in. Because I think you mentioned it earlier, oftentimes when we're in a leadership position, we think we already know the answer, right? We already, we've already replayed that conversation that we're going to have with someone, or maybe we're going to do the sales this way and this is how it's going to go, whatever it is. And if you don't go in with clarity about what the conversation's about, you can get derailed so quick and come out of a conversation or a meeting and you're completely lost and you didn't get what you needed out of the meeting. And the person who sat across from you didn't get what they needed either. So in the world of meeting after meeting after meeting, and I keep hearing it from clients or colleagues and people, it's like meetings are such a waste of time if there's not clarity before you go in.
And what the end result should be.
Yes. And like, we've all seen like what the Instagram stuff where it's like, I had a meeting about the meeting and what we talked about in the meeting kind of thing. It's like, what is the meeting about?
It's too much.
Get clear before you go in. So I love that you mentioned the clarity part, because I think it's very helpful for anybody who wants to gain confidence in their leadership skills or just in general. spend time, just take a moment to get clear about what it is that your goal is and what is the point of what you're doing. And once you start there and you have it clear, not to be cliche, then you're able to move forward in a more effective manner.
Yeah.
For
and
sure.
just bringing that up too, it's like, this is definitely something that I think is in your personal life as well. And I never understood the concept like, oh, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. I'm like, how can that, what are you talking about? When people would say that, it was so annoying to me. I'm like, oh, I get it. Like when you're fearful of something and you're nervous, you avoid, right?
Absolutely.
So whether it's a conversation at work, whether it's a new project, whether it's a conversation with your husband or spouse, when I'm nervous, I avoid things. So it's not like how I grocery shop is how I do this. It's like, no, right. What I do when I feel this feeling is the same across the board, right?
Absolutely.
It's how I do everything. And so the thing is that having that difficult conversation, and it's so funny, remind me when we're finished, I'll tell you more about it, but I just started this little offer I had. It's, how to basically set up a conversation for success, because we will stall before we have that difficult conversation with somebody. When if you have basically a format or like figure out, hey, this is what I want to solve.
Yes.
Not bad. I'm not going to be mean. We're just going to talk about something. I'm not going to get defensive. How do I not get defensive? And, figuring out how to do that. Yep. And they can think and feel and do whatever they want, but this is really how I feel. And I think consistency over boundaries, when I say that, is that, or consistency with boundaries, I apologize, is that this is how I feel. And I don't have to worry about being convinced not to feel that way. Like, right. I don't have to worry about being gaslit. I don't have to worry about any of those things because I feel really strong about what I'm about to say. And it's setting yourself up for a conversation, and people think, well, I just don't want to be nervous. You're going to be nervous, even if you're totally prepared. If you have to terminate someone, you're going to be nervous because it sucks. Like nobody wants to do that, but you don't have to be mean or aggressive. You can be very kind.
Yep. Yes.
And just still do it. Right.
Right.
But so people think that the communication, all that should be easy. And once you can, I think another one thing of leadership actually is one of them is communication.
Yeah.
Because I think that's my fifth one, right? Am I out? Is my fifth one? I think
we're there. We'll kind of go back through a little bit again and just back to the clarity.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Be more clear. But
I know that we're not going to use 5 steps. We promise. But I think one of them was, I think being very generous with feedback, right? And communication. But communication is the one thing we do, no matter where you are, who you're with. You have to be a good communicator. You communicate at the supermarket. You communicate at work. You communicate with the person on the phone trying to solve your issue with a credit card. You communicate with your husband, your children, with everybody. And so I think mastering or learning how to effectively communicate is so important and effectively communicate doesn't mean that you get the outcome you want necessarily. It just means you're satisfied at the end of a conversation or an interaction. Yeah. The other person also leaves satisfied, and they may not get what they want either out of this.
Yeah. But obviously there are times where you want to have an end in mind, correct? But oftentimes if you go in with only one solution in your mind, you're going to miss the 10 that are in between. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that when you're in a situation especially in leadership and working with teams, or even in family situations or at the grocery store, if you're only looking at what your brain is offering you, the one solution without prepping, thinking through it and being more curious, you can get in a lot of trouble with that because that's where you have the line in the sand and there isn't a win-win in the conversation. I think oftentimes there's possibility for a win-win, but one or both of the people who are communicating are stuck with the one idea and they're not willing to explore and be a little bit more curious about the whys and hows and whens and all the good things that are available to you. One thing I want to talk to you about, and I think it was when you were talking about setting boundaries and being uncomfortable with conversations. One thing that I think too, when it comes to being uncomfortable and feeling like it has to be easy, you mentioned it having to be easy. It just isn't, right? And we know that. Mm-hmm. But one thing I think is important is to learn how to be uncomfortable before you have to be uncomfortable. What happens with your body? How do you respond? And to understand that most of us, when we're uncomfortable, maybe you get flushed, maybe you start sweating. For me, sometimes my glasses will fog up. It's just silly. Like you get to learn your own things. But once you learn them, here's what you'll discover that I think will be very valuable for you, for the people listening, is that your response to being uncomfortable does not last indefinitely. It will last typically 5 to 10 seconds, maybe. Very rarely, unless you're, pre-gaming it. Like the pre-game of being uncomfortable is always worse than the actual conversation, right? You think about, I have to go ask my boss for a raise. Well, you're in your office and you're stressed for hours and hours and hours and you're thinking about the conversation. But once you get in there, being uncomfortable won't last very long, because that conversation, as soon as your mouth opens, you're going to be better. So I think there's something super valuable to learning your own expression of uncomfortable, for lack of a better word. And I joke with people, I'll tell them to go get on an elevator and look backwards while everybody else is looking forward. And you don't have to do that. But it was something I learned when I was in college with communication. Like, it's so funny, but my communication teacher told us to do that. And I thought, I was petrified because she really wanted us to do it. When you do that, it's kind of a metaphor in a way. It's that you're uncomfortable. Everybody's looking at you. Your fear of everybody looking at you, what's going to happen, all those things comes up. But guess what? Somebody might giggle. Somebody might turn around with you. I mean, you just realize that we take ourselves so seriously, and we just need to learn what is it that's happening with your body when you're uncomfortable. There may be something that you have to manage. I had a friend, her name was ironically Stacy, that each time she got uncomfortable, she would sweat like profusely. So if she had a big meeting, she knew that she had to use a certain outfit that she could wear, not to show that. Like that's what she had to do. But the point is that she learned what it was that happened and just managed that versus going down the spiral and never having the conversation or never doing what you need to do and keeping it from you promoting yourself or doing the difficult conversation that you need to have.
I love that. I think that's so good because I think if I could learn this, if it's very difficult, is just being willing to feel any feeling.
Yes.
And be okay with it and not feel like you have to run from it. It's really hard to do because we think that something has gone terribly wrong when we're afraid to do something, and it's not going to be easy. We just think it's just gone terribly wrong. Why? That's just an emotion, just like happy, sad. I'm going to feel probably all emotions 10 times throughout the course of a day. Maybe an hour. Who knows? It depends on the day.
Maybe in 5 minutes.
Yes. And I could feel them simultaneously sometimes. I could laugh and cry at the same time.
Yes.
But we think that something has gone terribly wrong because we don't like the one feeling. We don't like the feeling of being scared or nervous or something like that. We just don't like that one. But it's not a bad one, right? Sometimes I think our body's way of protecting us is that you're scared or nervous for a reason because your body senses fear. And your body will sense your mind can process fear. And I love how you always take me back even to like into my body and into like one time you're like, go run your hand under cold water. I'm like, huh? I'm like, oh, it does reset my central nervous system. Yeah. And it's so helpful to always go back to that. And you're so much better at that than I am. But
I don't think I'm better than that. I just do it differently than you do.
Reminding me. Yeah. I think
I think that's the thing. And I think that brings up a really valid point too, that it doesn't matter how you do you, whatever you is, as long as you learn the tools that work best for you, that will help you become a better leader. There are some principles that listening here you can grab from. There are things that you can learn in certifications in school, from a manager, from whatever. It's all about learning what works best for you, but the willingness to do it and to be uncomfortable and feel the feelings and go through that process is the most important part of that. Tagging along with that is being curious and not when you do have an overwhelming feeling or something that's keeping you from doing something, instead of going to shame and blame, because our brains like to have a reason something is happening. So a lot of times, what do? I'm broken. I'm not okay. That's what our brains will tell us. But the reality is that you're doing exactly what everyone else is doing. You're processing a fear. You're processing a doubt. You're experiencing something that is very normal in the situation. There's no shame or blame to be had here. There's no judgment that needs to happen. It's simply, it's good to know that my brain really thinks that I'm broken when this happens. So what is the truth about the situation and how can I go about dealing with it? One of the last things that we talked about with the top things to look for or to do was the boundaries. And boundaries can be very difficult for people to stay with because your boundaries oftentimes will make other people uncomfortable. So the point I wanted to go with this is learning for you to be uncomfortable is important, but it's also important as a leader to learn how to be okay with seeing someone else uncomfortable that's sitting across from you and not have to fix that. And all I mean by that is you're going to be uncomfortable because they're uncomfortable and they're uncomfortable because you're, all that little cycle. Learning to sit with that is important too. And it all works together. There is no perfect way to do it. It's just getting good at what works best for you.
I love that you said that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to tell a little story. I had a situation when I was in HR. I was with a company that was a very large company, and we were getting ready to terminate a large population of people that were there. And I'll never forget, I was in a meeting with a VP, CFO, COO, and they were asking me how to terminate all these people at one time and what all the legal ramifications were and blah, blah, blah. And I was mortified because on a conference call with them, I'm sitting in the room with the CFO, the COO, and the VP were on a conference. So we were all conferenced together, but the two of us were in the room together. And this person, the CFO asked me, he's like, so what do we need to look for? Like, what's going to happen when this happens and terminating all these people at one time? And I'm thinking through the paperwork and, you have COBRA and insurance. You have all these things happening, right? And I'm reeling through that. And then I just said, I don't know. It was the most uncomfortable I don't know that I've ever said in my entire life. And my brain immediately said, you're a horrible manager. You're horrible. I mean, all the things that were going through my brain because I just told the CFO, the COO, the VP that I don't know what I'm doing here. And I remember feeling this sensation of wanting to literally jolt up in my chair and run out of the room and just like, you can fire, I know I'm fired, bye. But I, of course, kept my composure, finished up the conversation. And I told them, of course, my follow-up to the I don't know was, I don't know, but I will find out by the end of the day and I'll let you know. So I remember going back to my office and I am literally almost in tears, no joke, sitting at my desk frantically, trying to get a hold of the people I need to get a hold of to figure out what I need to do and what do I need to tell all of these people in the C-suite. And my CFO knocks on my door, walks in the room and shuts the door behind him and sits down.
Oh, no.
And I am literally I'm getting fired, I'm getting fired, I'm getting fired. I just knew it. And he said, I just want to tell you how impressed I am with you. And I was like, wait, what?
I love it.
And he says, you just told an entire C-suite that you don't know what you're doing and you are confident about it. And I said, actually, I am not confident about it, but I appreciate you coming to my office. And I said, but I will find out for you. And I learned so much for that interaction. It simply told me that you don't always have to have the answers and you can be uber, uber uncomfortable and survive. Literally, I felt like I was in survival mode in that, I don't know, it was probably a span of 10 minutes. And of course, I went through, figured out what we had to do, and then we moved forward. But it's such a great lesson when you're in a position where you've moved up, it is impossible for you to know everything. As a leader, it is impossible. Until you have an experience, you cannot have understanding of what that experience is. So if you will give yourself a break, if you will take a moment, if you'll just be confident in saying, I don't know, oftentimes that's all you need to do. What is not good is if you fake it and, do something that's wrong. I guess not every situation is the same. That was I couldn't just fake that because there were some legal things that happened there. But it's just interesting how we think confidence is knowing everything. Confidence is not knowing everything. Being a good leader is not knowing everything. And it's just all these points that you've brought up today have been really good key points, I think, for people to consider and to think over and to practice. So do you have samples or examples in your world that you can think of that were, I don't know, interesting to you or questioned your confidence and how you kind of shine as a leader at the end?
Yeah, all of those things. I think the one thing that I learned is just from what you said too, is we'll automatically go to, it's funny that your body told you to run. You're like, I gotta get out of here. My fight or flight was like, run, find the nearest exit, don't answer the question. But when backed into a corner and you couldn't say yes, and you had to say, I don't know, what you didn't do, which I think is great, is like so many people go, I should know that. I'm like, no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't know that. Yeah. And I think the one thing is that when I do it with myself, even I'm like, oh, I should know this. I'm like, I answer myself and I say, no, I shouldn't know this. Mm-hmm. And for your listeners too, it's like, oh, I should, that I'm like, tell yourself, no, I shouldn't. I shouldn't know this. I've never done this before. How would I know it? I should have done that. Well, at the time, had you known the outcome, you probably would have, but you didn't. Yep. So no, you shouldn't have. I think the should is the worst thing. So I think it's awesome that you didn't. You're like, oh man, I should have, blah. There was nothing else you could do. You had like 2 seconds to decide, right? You know, as far as experiences go, I've learned the hard way most things. And I think because 20 years ago, if there would have been coaches, right?
Oh gosh, what I wouldn't have given, right?
Oh, it would be in it. Now it's so nice because all the things that we did the hard way and the embarrassing way or the way that got us in trouble at some point, what I love doing is being able to help people see it now and fast forward past those things so that they can actually move forward faster in their career or relationship or whatever it is. I'm like, well, you don't have to do this the hard way. Right. And so I think it's so important. But, you know, there are a lot of times when I, you know, being the operations manager at Neiman Marcus, there was operations manager and general manager. And I did everything that was not selling. So behind the scenes in operations, basically. And she did everything front and forward selling, but I was responsible for our P&L, and she spent money like a drunken sailor. And I would tell her that. I'm like, look, lady.
I think that's pretty common. I'll just say that from an HR standpoint. I see the numbers sometimes.
Right. And it was always so hard because to have to, you know, out of respect, you know, I would have to tell her, no, we can't do this. Or, you know, sometimes, you know, disagree with decisions and such too, meaning also too, I was overseeing loss prevention. And we had a couple of situations where the immediate response was, well, we should do this. I'm like, no, we have to find out more information first. We can't just do this. Or if somebody made a big mistake and it cost us money when the mistake could have happened to anybody, you know, the immediate thing is, well, they need to be terminated. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And it was really hard to say, but it wasn't hard to say when I didn't even need courage because I just knew and I trusted myself. I'm like, I'm not going to do that to this person. This is their livelihood at stake. We're not just going to terminate them for an error in a number of a zip code that ended up sending $100,000 of furs to the wrong location. Yeah, that's bad. But, you know, he could have sent deodorant to the wrong location. It cost us $100, right? Who knows? It's not the amount. It's the fact that the error was very simple. And so I think it was always very hard to have to hold my boundaries. I think that's really where that came in. It's like, I have boundaries and I'm not going to compromise my boundaries and to not feel uncomfortable with my boss or my manager at the cost of an employee and their livelihood. I'm just not going to do that. And so it's never easy. And I think that's a learned skill over 20 years of doing it. I was able to do that.
Isn't that also clarity though? I think they intertwined there, the clarity and the boundary, because when you're clear about what you will or won't do, or you're clear about what the overall goal of the organization is, you can keep hiring people, but you still have to train them. You still have to get them not to do the wrong buttons, right? The next person could do the same thing. So there are just so many things that are important when it comes to being being willing to be clear about what you're willing to do and what willing not to do and how you're going to support your team.
And it's also the emotional intelligence part too, or the emotional regulation, which I prefer over emotional intelligence, is that I'm not going to let an emotion take over, right? Like if I'm mad about something, it's just the emotional regulation. You can be mad at something, but you cannot throw something across the room or fire somebody. You could be mad and feel the feeling of anger and still make a rational decision. Absolutely. And that's that regulation that says, I'm not going to, it's also too like if you have employees and you're like, what do we do? They're going to look at you and be like, what do we do? You know? And so
it's like everybody's on fire running in different directions. Like, that was my visual, right?
No, we can't all do that. One of us has to be very, very rational about it. Well, let's just look at it for what it really is, right?
Absolutely.
And we're not making any rash decisions, and we're going to have that regulation or maturity or intelligence, whatever you want to call the emotion, how you regulate it. It's just important to have too, I think. But, and I think that, you know, how you do it is also important too, where people don't feel bad about themselves because it's not who you are. It's just this thing you did.
Absolutely.
And it's not who you are as a person. You're not a failure. This one thing just didn't that you didn't work out, right?
Yep.
And it wasn't intentional. So I think understanding that's really important too.
Yeah. And I know we're getting a little off topic, but I do think there's some value in understanding that sometimes you'll find yourself in a place or in a position or doing some type of work maybe you're not that great at, but it doesn't mean that you personally are not a good person or that you're not able to find something else that's better. I used to always say in HR, there's always somebody willing to come do your work, but you're always able to find another job. It goes both ways. And I had a title. One of my GMs gave me a title that I really don't want to brag about, but it's true. He said, "You are the best person I've ever met in firing people." And I'm like, that's because I have literally fired over 300 and something people in my life. Actually more than that.
Yes. Even fall into humble bragging. That's like, no. I don't want to admit it, but it's actually really good if you can do that and be good at it.
Yes. So well, I have done it. And I think here's what my method has always been is that acknowledging that they're human, right? What are they good at? Because they're good at something. So if you're finding yourself in the position that you are terminated or you're fired or you're let go for whatever reason, there's something that you're good at. Don't use that situation as I'm doomed, I'm horrible, I can't do, don't wallow there because it's over. So yeah, I just always let people, figure it out. What are they really good at? Because every person that ever walked, well, there's only one person. I digress. There was one person that I'm really not sure if that person ever had a job anywhere that was functional. But other than that person, there has never been a person that I did not have a very clear idea of what they were good at and how they could actually really do well in another position. So I think it's valuable as a leader to see everybody as human and understand that even though they may not be performing or even though things aren't going well, that doesn't mean they're a bad person. They deserve humanity.
And it's interesting too, is just because you don't have to believe what people tell you. Meaning if your boss says, "Oh, you're bad at this," or I'm like, you actually don't have to believe them. If you know you're not, like, no, I'm actually not bad at this. I was just having a bad day, But we internalize the titles people give us sometimes. And it's so hard not like, "Oh my gosh, you're a terrible mom because I didn't get the sweater I wanted," whatever. And you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a terrible mom." No, I'm actually not. I don't have to believe what people tell you or how they define you or how they title you. And, well, bad at this because my boss has told me that for 5 years. I must be. No, I'm actually not bad at this.
Yeah. Really. Or, that goes for friends and family too. I love it. Well, I'm going to do a real quick. Here's the problem, y'all. Stacy and I could go on forever and ever because we can talk about topics forever and ever. And we love to do it. And we love to coach. And we love to get into the nitty-gritty of things and make them all better. Let's wrap up the 5 characteristics of a confident leader. Number 1, clarity over confidence. Number 2, the courage to be seen. Number 3, having curiosity over certainty. Number 4, being consistent over boundaries. And then number 5, actually, you know what? We need to talk a little bit more about this one. I know we touched on it, but we didn't spend a lot of time here about generosity with your feedback. So let's have one little conversation about having generosity with feedback, and then we'll do a wrap up on that.
I think the point of that is just a lot of times people want to shy away from feedback and what they perceive as a difficult conversation because the way they receive feedback. And so if you think about it, if accountability, for some reason, I was always afraid of accountability. I think I made it feel like I was bad or something like that. I'm not sure, but probably a long time ago, the way I was held accountable was it made me recoil or avoid it or something, right? So, and we think that when we give feedback, well, we don't want someone to feel like that. Well, I don't want to make them feel like this just because that's how I feel when I get, feedback. But then don't make them feel like that. So I'm like, then don't do that. Then
don't do it like that.
I know, don't do it like that. Yeah. And then, but it's that you can give feedback and hold people accountable in a way that's not mean or cruel. It's just we're going to talk about something, right? And I think building trust and connection with people over time, when you do have something to offer them, they're not afraid of it. They will welcome it a little bit more. Or I think the best thing is setting the stage for a conversation by just saying it. Hey, look, this might be a little uncomfortable. Okay.
Absolutely.
Just let you know that I'm also like a little uncomfortable with this conversation, but we have to have it. And so if you just kind of meet me in the middle here, and just say what you're feeling and being very authentic with it, it helps a lot when you're giving feedback. And sometimes we think, oh, they don't want to know that. They don't want to know that. I don't want to nag. And they want the feedback and they long for feedback. And when you hold back from them, they feel like they're not growing.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so it can go one of two ways. Like if you're like, some people are like, oh my gosh, will my boss just stop already with telling me, things? And some people are like, no, I want to know so I can be better. So that's when you just have to go back to trusting yourself. And I always go back to that. What do I feel like I need to do right now for this individual based
Right.
on the way they learn, the way they listen here, and so on and so forth. But just being generous with the feedback, I think is just very
Absolutely.
important, and not thinking it's too much or too little or any of the above.
That's interesting because as you were talking about that concept, I was thinking, I think that's why I was so good at firing people because it wasn't the feedback I gave them was neutral feedback. When I was terminating people, there were a few instances that were not good or whatever, right? That weren't the same. But most of the time you're giving them feedback of why it's not working out. And here's how it can work for you in the future if you would change this,
Mhm.
whatever. They've been given so many instances. But I think feedback in general, when you're a leader, is hard because you're also anticipating their reaction,
Mhm.
which leads me to one other thing, and that is you're not responsible for other people's reaction to you. And
Mhm.
so if you could get the baseline for yourself that you're only responsible for yourself
Mhm.
and you cannot manage other people's behavior when they respond to you, as long as you're committed to giving it in a way that, like you were saying, you're not doing it, you're not giving feedback to be mean. You're not giving feedback to, see, I caught you, you didn't do it right, that kind of thing. You're
Mhm.
doing it because you're anticipating that we all want to get better at whatever it is that
Mhm.
we're doing. And the
Mhm.
only way you get better is by giving feedback. One interesting little note, and Stacy has the most adorable little niece named Quinn. So, Quinn, I'm bringing this up because we talk about kids, and when they're growing up, we give them feedback all the time, right? All the time, we give them feedback, and we don't feel bad about giving them feedback. Why
Mhm.
is that? It's because they're learning. We anticipate that they want to get better. They want to walk better. They want to, eat better. They want to use a fork instead of throwing stuff on their face. And
Mhm.
we have no problem giving them feedback and being honest with them. But for some reason, when we become adults, all of a sudden, we change how we communicate with one another when we give feedback. So I encourage you, in general, the listeners, to welcome feedback more and work at not being defensive when you get feedback. Because
Mhm.
one thing Stacy said earlier, Stacy, I love this, is that you don't have to believe everything everybody tells you. So let people give you feedback and decide, is that true or not, and what you're going to do with it once they give it to you.
Mhm.
And that way you're not sitting there defending yourself. That person can
Mhm.
believe what they want, but you can also get the feedback and utilize it the way you need to on the other
Mhm.
end. What were you going to say? I could.
I was just thinking, like, it's also one thing to think this it's hard, it's as simple and as difficult as this, but it's like, let people be wrong about you.
I love it.
We all want to be understood, but you let yourself just be misunderstood. People can misunderstand me or they can be wrong about me, and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have no need to defend it or stand up. And I think that, telling a younger person, correcting them and stuff, is because we just assume they don't know because we know they don't know,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so if you maybe approach feedback like that was a great analogy. Maybe if you approach giving feedback like that, is they just don't know. Let me just help,
Yes.
just show them and tell them because they just don't know yet.
Yes.
She does know she's the cutest little girl on the planet, though. I
She
think I tell
is
her all the
absolutely the
time.
cutest.
She
And it's
definitely
just
knows that.
funny because Stacey
I-
occasionally will send me a video of Quinn, and I was a picture of her when she was eating came up, and it just made me think of that. But we don't second guess giving littles
uh-uh.
information and feedback. We just don't. And as we get older, we kind of feel even when someone says, "How do I look?" You don't want to go, you question yourself like giving people feedback. But I think a lot of
Mhm.
that is the anticipatory response that you're going
Mhm.
to get from the feedback. So there's so much to this conversation, and I think we'll just have to have Stacy back at some point so we can talk in other
This
topics.
is so much
But
fun. It's like
it's
coffee talk.
yes, it is, and it's just such a fun topic because leadership is not only being in the C-suite, it's not only being a manager, it's being a mom, it's being a dad, it's being a girlfriend, a spouse, it's being a daughter. It's funny how there are so many times in your life that you find yourself in a position where you need to lead and feel confident and be confident. And I think the thing that is hard is that confidence is constant work. It's
Mhm.
constant introspection and it's constant growth. And one thing that I do always believe that is getting coaching is going to help you get there faster. Yes, you can do it on your own. Yes, you can find tools on your own that are free. But I think one of the biggest investments for me in my life was the conversation we started today, is like pushing that button on that investment to become a coach and work further. And my standpoint was, and I don't know, were you already getting coached prior to becoming certified? Were you getting coached with the coach program? No. So I had spent a couple years being coached myself there, and I had hired other coaches before that, years before. So I have, in my life, have always invested in coaching when it was available. But I think that if you're a person who is in a leadership role and you are struggling with confidence, I think seek yourself out a coach. I am going to endorse Stacy. Just obviously, I love her, and I think her coaching is amazing. And just so you know, we coach each other because we have confidence issues too. And so we will on occasion say, hey, I need to schedule an appointment with you and knock out this thing that's happening in my brain. Our brains are always going to try to keep us safe. And when you are a person who wants to grow and get better and do the things, you have to step out of the safe zone. So
what's interesting and just to piggyback on that too, is I think what it taught me is just about myself is that, like, I can fill out a worksheet and I can do the things and I love it because it creates some awareness, but I'm only going to answer those questions in the way that's safe for me. And so I'll get myself about 80% of the way there. And then I stop because that's only how far I know how to go. Like, I don't know how to get the other 20%.
Absolutely.
And most of the time when I speak with people, they just don't know how to get themselves past that because they've never gone over there, right? To that other side where it's a little scary. Yeah. So we just make it safe for them to go over there and understand it. And I don't have the answer for them after the 80%, but I get them to feel comfortable going there because they've never done it themselves. And so even when I get coached too, I'm like, I'll get 80% there. And I think I haven't, I can't get there. I'm like, oh, and then all of a sudden I have this, I call them an Oprah aha moment. And I'm like, I get it now. Like, I never even thought of that. And so I think it's very helpful what you just said.
I think it's true. And I will say, I've mentioned I've been coached by you many times. There's one that sticks out in my brain, and I don't know why, but I was really struggling with something that had to do with faith. And I get emotional about it. So weird. But Stacy was able to coach me on it. And it was when I was having a problem with a group that I was in. And it was so interesting because it was a group, women of faith, and I was having a struggle and I didn't understand it. And I can coach myself. I knew the basics of what was happening, but that little, like you said, that 20%, when you got me there, it was so obvious, but it was like, wait a second, I've been going on this premise my whole life and I have missed this little sliver, but that little sliver opened up so many things for me. So I really think that if you are a person who's sitting out there and you're struggling with confidence, you're struggling with your leadership, you're struggling with a new job or an old job, or something is just not quite right, and you just want to get that 20%, get in touch with Stacy, get in touch with me. Let's get you that extra 20%. In the notes, I'll connect how you can reach out to Stacy and how you might be able to connect with her. And is there anything else, Stacy, that you want to say to kind of wrap things up today? And we'll go from there. Yeah,
I'm just actually honestly really grateful to have been on this show. And I can attest for your coaching as well, as it helped me so many times, because we're all just human and we're all doing the best we can. And we just need help. And sometimes I think we have to go it alone. And it's a sign of weakness to ask for help, which has always been very difficult for me. But it's not actually, it's a sign of courage to do that. And
absolutely.
Why suffer if you don't have to? That's how I look at it too. I'm like, make things easier on ourselves.
Absolutely. Make things easier on ourselves. Awesome. Well, Stacy, thank you for coming on the show. I know everybody has to love it as much as I do. And as I said, I'm going to drop some things, some connection in the notes. I'm going to go ahead and shout out. You can find Stacy on LinkedIn. But she will also have a freebie for you at the end too. And then if you need any other way to connect with us, that will be in the description notes as well. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It has been a blast. I would love for you to do me a huge favor and either go leave a rating or a review. And if you really love the podcast or you've learned anything at all, please pass it on to a friend or a family member that might enjoy the podcast as well. That's how I grow, and that's how I'm able to continue bringing you content. If you are interested in coaching, just go to thecrazyconfidencecoach.com. You can sign up for a free discovery call there. Thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you next Tuesday so we can build our crazy confidence together. Love you big.